And welcome back to Candidates Corner on LPTV, a production of the Libertarian Party and Libertarian National Committee. Tonight, John Gapso on the big board. And of course, I'm your host, Pat Ford. We've got a few purposes for this show and sort of like a weekly mantra. We want to give the Libertarian Party an opportunity to meet our wonderful down ballot candidates. From water boards to departments of education to, well, in this case, to the United States Senate. We want to challenge them to incorporate, as we call it, lunch pail issues from their voters' perspective, from the prism of their voters' lives, and push them through, if you will, a libertarian perspective. And of equal importance, we want to give the entire nation an opportunity to meet our candidates, understand that through our statement of principles, through our platform, our mission is enhanced. Our goals are furthered. Freedom in our lifetime. If we understand the necessary relationship between a candidate, say, in New Hampshire and a candidate in Texas. Someone running for, as I always say, and he knows who I'm talking about, for a rail district, a commuter rail district in Colorado, is as important as someone, say, running for the state's House of Representatives in Florida. With that, it is my great pleasure to introduce someone that I am proud to call a friend. I have worked alongside of on the political field of battle, and someone who can be as serious as anyone I've met in the political sphere, but just a great person and a lot of fun. And of course, I'm talking about Desarae Lindsey. Desarae, welcome to Candidates Corner. How are you tonight?
I'm fabulous. How are you, Pat?
I am. It is magic here, absolute magic.
Good.
And I have, and I've determined that, despite the, and I'll use the word loosely, heartbreak of the last week or two, you and I are going to, as my daughter would say, have a hell of a good time tonight, because we're going to have a celebration, regardless of what's happening and swirling around us, because that's what's important, right? We're going to celebrate liberty, and we're going to talk about issues that matter, and we're going to be on point. And at the same time, despite occasional issue differences, we're going to display, as you like to call it, the love of the liberty movement. How about that? Does that work for you?
Perfect.
Excellent. So talk to us about your theme. All right, let's get right to it. You know, folks are well acquainted with your involvement in the community. We all know that you've been involved in the liberty movement seemingly for a lifetime. Talk about your theme of love and friendship and you know that magic that you carry with you.
So I think that, and Pat, I know you and I have discussed this before. We're as a country in dire need of a culture shift, and especially after all of the division that we saw happen after the 2016 election, it has become more and more imperative. It always was, and I do believe that the culture shift has always been happening, which I'd like to kind of get back into later. But for me, I think it's about, it's really about changing the just the way people treat each other, talk to each other, and so on. And I believe that with candidates, I think that a lot of the times in our party, we have this idea that we have to emulate the old parties in order to be taken seriously. And I really, really disagree with that. I think the more that we show the public that we're here beside and for them, the more impact we can make, and just being ourselves along the way. I mean, I've made it a goal. I'm going to run a very active campaign, but I've made it a goal. I'm going to dress like I always do. I'm just going to be myself. And, hopefully that resonates more with people. We definitely need to be building bridges instead of burning them. And to me, it's all about the culture shift. And so, that's why we kind of named the campaign Peace and Love Texas. And we had done that in 2018 as well, but that was more of a paper candidacy. But this one, we're trying to make maximum impact. And that's why we're starting so early. The election isn't until November 22. So.
Well, and talk about that, because you've actually been at it for a few months now. to your eternal credit. One of our mantras here, our obsessions, is that regardless of what you're running for, again, Water Board, United States Senate, you have to jump on that train early. Talk about the development of your campaign staff and where you're drawing from, and give us an overview, if you will, of the early plan.
Okay, so we just did the official launch last week, and by the way, it's Texas State Senate, not U.S. Senate. Last time I was running for U.S. Congress, which is probably for you, where the confusion comes in. But and I think that we can make good impact running for state senate here because it's a large district. We'll see what shakes out with the redistricting this fall, but it's still going to be large, I'm sure, and it's very rural. And we're trying to get a different kind of message out there. And so we did start just kind of building in. I just had this wild idea. Like, I guess I'm just going to go ahead and run for office, like, I think I'm going to run for ST3. Yeah, that sounds good. And I reached out to one of my libertarian and state libertarian executive committee reps and was like, do you know if anyone plans to run in this district? Because I think I'm gonna. And he's like, no, I mean, I'd support you, go for it. And I just kept thinking about it and talking about it. And then I reached out to some other people and they're like, hey, we're here if you want us. So, we're here to help. And so I just was like, all right. And by the end of the weekend, like, we'd already developed at least a temporary website and got a bank account and just did all the kind of initial things that you do. There are some people so as you know, Pat, very well, I was Vermin Supreme's campaign manager for the 2020 convention season. We don't have primaries here. And, I was able to draw a lot from the network that I met through him, as well as some long-term friends, and then just people that I've known just from being around forever. I have been here for about a decade now. And which is almost a quarter of my life. Blows my mind a little bit. So yeah, we have a pretty eclectic group, and one of my very, very, very dearest friends on the planet, like one of my top 2 best friends of all time, Darren Pollock, is our treasurer, and he had recommended her name. She goes by Penny Lane, which is actually her middle name, Penny Lane. She's a big Beatles fan. Her parents are Beatles fans and so on. And but she's Penelope Clark on Facebook, and I hope she doesn't mind me like calling her out. But she's kind of shy sometimes. But she was on Kerry McKinnon's campaign last cycle, and so Darren connected me with her, and I'd heard about her from Tyler Smith too, who's running for LNC secretary and a really, really good friend of mine as well. And boy, were they right. She has been just a rock star and a massive asset. And Aaron Goss, who's one of my dear friends, has been a huge, huge part of this just from the beginning. We have a really good eclectic team of newer libertarians, more seasoned libertarians, and people that are also outside of the party. And that's something that we are really focused on, is building coalitions with like more issue-based groups and organizations and things like that to try to get our message out there. And especially in a red rural district where, a Democrat ran last time and I had never even heard her name until I went to vote. And I'm pretty educated about who's running where, but I had literally never heard her name. Fun fact, just real quick, I know I'm kind of rambling, which I tend to do. You're used to that, Pat. My husband actually ran in this district back in 2014 and got almost 10% of the vote, and he was just a paper candidate. So I think we can actually, we have something to build upon and to work with. I have no idea if a Democrat's going to run this time. There hadn't been one until last cycle and a few cycles. But regardless, I think that our message is more compassionate and more beautiful and more compelling. So that's my hope anyway. We just have to get it out there.
Let's talk about issues. With the state of Texas has been the center of a number of controversies over the last few years. Within the last year, it seems like it's become one of the epicenters of American politics. Let's jump on the obvious, of course, and that's the Second Amendment and carry regulations in Texas. Where do they stand now? Where do you hope to be? And what's gone on in just even in the last few months?
Actually, with this legislative session that just ended, they're about to
Right.
call it a special session. July 8th is when that will be. But open carry, well, open carry was already legal. Dang, I need Cameron. He's the one that knows all this stuff. But I'm not a big gun person really, so that's why I try to surround myself with. I'm a freedom person, but I try to surround myself with people who are gun people. But as far as I know, we're looking pretty good as far as legislation for guns in Texas. And now I'm definitely showing my ignorance. This is something we actually went over and over and over last weekend because the people on my team know that I'm not really big into guns. So, I might be able to find my notes right here. Might.
No worries.
One of the things so with this legislative session here in Texas, abortion was essentially banned. There have been many, many attempts at taking freedoms from trans individuals. Apparently, Dan Patrick is looking to revisit at least the transgendered sports players bill with the special session. But and people on our team are talking about staging a protest at a radio station he owns, either here in the Dallas area. I mean, I'm not in Dallas, but closer to Dallas than I am to Houston, where the other one is. But when we were looking at it, it looks like the Houston one might be better because there's more room to protest. But we plan to go and protest him and fly our trans flags high. So that's that. He's just despicable, as we all know.
Right.
The thing that really I'll never forget, we were on a campaign call actually on Zoom when we found out about the abortion bill, and I just legit started crying, just tears pouring down my face, and I reached out to a lot of my friends that are abortion activists and was like, I'm so sorry I didn't take you as seriously. I really never thought this would happen. And, a lot of the response I got was I saw it coming miles away. And I'm like, I know you did. And I'm sorry I didn't listen to you. I should have been fighting alongside you. I just didn't think it would really happen. But it did.
Oh, no, I understand. Well, you've got, like I said, you've already mentioned the abortion issue. And it strikes me that, ironically, a state known for freedom, in certain cases, seeks to extend its control. Talk about that sort of dichotomy, that notion that, don't mess with Texas, but we're going to screw with Texas ourselves. You can't do that to our pledges. Only we can do that to our own pledges. I mean, how does that work? What is the real relationship between government in Texas and its people? Forget about the image, forget about the rhetoric.
Yeah. I'm speaking purely from my own personal perspective here. And definitely not for anyone else. I think a lot of people think that we're free because that we're a more free, more independent state. We're a big state. There's a lot of we're largely rural. We do boast, quite a few big cities compared to other states, and just more land mass in general. But we have a kind of the don't mess with Texas attitude. But it's okay as long as we agree with it when the government does it, sort of thing. So that's
Right.
pardon me, something I see a lot, just a mentality that I see a lot. And that's something, when I talk about the culture shift that I'm hoping to highlight a bit, we have a lot of build the wall and, just a lot of different very vitriolic mantras and perspectives that are touted on the reg. You have to kind of pick and choose what you say publicly carefully, because you people might come at you, and you've got to be prepared for that. And I don't mean violently, like that's generally not going to happen, but people get very passionate, and there's a lot of I don't want to insult my state, because I do love it here, but there's a lot of racism in certain areas. There's a lot of just government attempting to impose their morality upon you, which is okay with a lot of, especially the older generation. So, yes.
No, I understand.
I love what you just highlighted.
Well, talk to us about your district. I mean, give us the geographical outlines. That temporary seizure I had when I thought you were running for the United States Senate. I'm not sure where that came from, but talk to us, define the boundaries. Tell us about the major cities. Paint us a picture of it economically, educationally. Draw us a portrait.
There aren't really any big cities, so it's a pretty very strange and mostly rural district. We do have a couple like kind of medium-sized cities, or a few of them, but it goes all the way from, where I live is just an hour from Dallas, and I'm kind of on the cusp of East Texas, as it were, and goes all the way towards down by Houston, including just I think it's a third of Montgomery County, which is probably going to be one of the more populated areas of the district. It's definitely rural. We also Nacogdoches is in our district. Bryant, like we have some college towns in our district, and those will be a heavy focus for us as we go along. Angela Fisher had done a bunch of just really, really, really in-depth research on the district, because she's just kind of a badass. And it's really mostly white. I mean, which I guess isn't shocking, because it is pretty rural. And a lot of single mothers, though, she said, which I think is a really good demographic for us to reach out to. And in fact, that's something that she had wanted us to focus on. And it's in dire need of a culture shift. If you can recall, like Jasper, Texas is in this district, and everybody knows what happened in Jasper, Texas. So,
well, tell us, bring people up to date. There's the challenge in the United States is when you come into these drastic events, is that there appear to be so many of them, and the media has such a short-term attention span here that folks are overwhelmed, if you will, by the lurid details of events, and very often there isn't that period of introspection afterwards to really examine and reflect on what happened. So tell us what happened.
If I get too deep into it, I'll start crying.
Now, just give us a quick overview. It's important so we can understand what you're working with there.
And I'm sorry to the people of Jasper, because they don't want to be known for it. I think that most of the people there do not feel this way, but this is where, God, I can't.
Well, it was the James Byrd story, essentially.
Yes.
The
James Byrd Jr. was dragged to death behind a truck.
Right, and this was, and again, it seems like so recent. The wounds are so fresh. Yet it was 1998, as I remember, or thereabouts in the late 90s. That woke up America as to the impact of just say, when I say institutional racism, I mean the sort of racism that continues sort of to permeate the nation quietly. It's in many quarters it's accepted. It's there. When you bring libertarian issues to the fore, and so many of them surround issues that are so provocative and evocative of Texas, and I'm talking about not just the Second Amendment, but obviously the other elephant in the room, of course, is immigration. Are ordinary folks as accepting of these societal changes in the last 20 to 30 years as we just assume they are, or is there still a deep-seated controversy about things like immigration and racism?
There is that, but I think that it's becoming more less prevalent, more of there. What I've observed just where I live, which is very rural, is a lot of young people who are very politically aware and very socially aware, and we're not raised to be racists, or we're not raised to be bigots in any way. We actually have we boast a very, very large GSM community where I live. We have a gay church here. We used to have 2 gay bars. We now just have 1, but I'm glad we have the 1. We're actually going to be doing an event out there really soon. We're still working out the date and the details, but we've already met with the owner and with a couple of the events promoters there, and we're going to be doing something there hopefully by the end of July is what we're looking at. We're just
excellent.
Someone talks about that, which of course I'll let people know about because I'm pretty excited about it. I do see. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. No, you say that's outstanding. I think, and sadly we keep bouncing into tragedies. I think when you understand that the anniversary of the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando was just a few weeks ago, that's excellent outreach, because I'm not sure if folks in particularly older folks my age understand the importance of the nightclub, if you will, to the GSM community. The nightclubs are very often not just a place to go party at night, but they're a community center. They're they take on the attributes of a social center, a church, it's very much a place where people, a variety of ages, are adopted into a community setting, and there are mentors there. There are folks who've lived through some of the worst. We're talking, nationally at least, there was some of the worst discrimination imaginable, and Absolutely. So because the next thing that I was going to start to talk to you about was, with all these provocative changes going on, and how in rural towns across America, just not Texas, this must be, you talk about upheaval. My father, for example, is 98, and he's a remarkably accepting man.
Awesome.
In his lifetime, he had my sister had to get a papal permission, if you will, in order to marry a Methodist. That's how much things have changed. Never mind intermarriage, never mind the GSM community, never mind any of that. And so it's not always by age. He fought in a world war, and as far as he's concerned, after that, everybody should be just happy. And he's fine with that. But at the same time, for a lot of older America, for a lot of rural America, and even then, I feel I should be ashamed of myself, from one sense, because I'm stereotyping to a certain degree. But in many parts of the country like that, the societal changes that have occurred in the last handful of years are shocking. So as a candidate for elected office, particularly from someone who's from a third party, if you will, the third party, and someone who represents personal freedom, what type of campaign plans you have? And let's talk about going to a local nightclub to reach out to those different members of different communities who have been siloed by the political process, quite frankly. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, and so here's the thing: is that and actually, I just kind of want to go back real quick, because I do want to say about James Byrd Jr. I know that the community of Jasper is really embarrassed about that, and I don't want to make it sound like they're still like that. I'm sure there are a few assholes or whatever, there always are, but I think that they did a lot of work to heal as a community and to do and be better, and I just want to shout that out. I don't want to make it seem like, oh, well, they're just backwoods rednecks or anything like that. But to address what you're talking about now, what I would really love to do, and I kind of felt emboldened it was my friend JC Cook, who I see commenting on here. He's also one of my best friends on the planet. It was his idea to say, like, we thought we were actually about to get kicked out of where we hold our county party meetings. Turns out we weren't, thankfully. But there was somebody that was very disruptive, and they had an issue with that. And so, we got a stern talking to. And so JC was like, if we need to move, we should move to the gay bar. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. That's great. But why didn't I think of that? But we do meet at the Cedar Creek Brewery here locally in Seven Points, Texas, just the next small town over. And they've been so good to us. We've started holding our meetings like when we had organized officially back in 2013, they had just opened. So it's been a very supportive relationship the whole time. So fortunately, we didn't lose that. But we would like to do events at the gay bar here. They do drag shows every Saturday. It's so much fun. They do, I guess they just started doing live music on Fridays. So that's exciting. And so what we're looking at when we had first met with them, we were just going up there to talk to them to say, like, well, hey, we're looking to just maybe just show up and we don't want to be rude to you, your staff, your guests, whoever, and just show up and like start passing out political literature. But they're like, well, I mean, we could do something else if you want to, like, and if it works, it works. But, they also don't want to be seen as partisan in any way, which I totally respect. Right. And I'm rambling again. I'm sorry. I tend to do that, but
no, this is important. I mean, what you're reflecting the realities of campaigning in America today. There are a variety of groups that have become organized and very often radicalized because they've been pigeonholed or they've been stereotyped or they've been just, to make it even more simple, they've been taken for granted in the political process for years. And the GSM community is part of that. And there's strong roots within the Democratic Party nationally with the GSM community because of the very often incorrect assumption that the only people that care about them are Democrats. And right. I think, I'll say this, I'm not going to ask you to say this, but it's in my humble opinion that, quite frankly, the Democratic Party at large were shamed into, literally, ironically, by Joe Biden, were shamed into accepting marriage equality. They've given lip service, if you will, to many of their concerns. For example, trans rights. For example, self-defense. With the violent crime rate against the trans community being, 800 times higher than that of, just run-of-the-mill folks who, blend into the background. It's astonishing that no one ever has had on a national level a serious conversation about two-way rights and how they impact the GSM community. And most importantly, if you will, just because of the sheer statistics, the trans community. It's all credit to JC and credit to you. I mean, if you could dive right into the heart of that which the establishment takes for granted and that the establishment assumes, and you know what that means, assumes is under their philosophical control, then that's the kind of smash mouth in your face campaigning that needs to take place nationally. We have to go where we are either not accepted, not liked. We are often confused with, if you will, the dreaded GOP. I don't know about your section of Texas, but I've about had it with liberty Republicans, or even worse, libertarian leaning Republicans. Yes. I about had it with that. And so I mean, how in a campaign like no other, how are you ready to just dive in and confront the stereotypes of libertarianism and actually address the disparate needs of a community like yours, which sounds like everybody else of this community? Really complicated once you get beneath the surface. So, what other, in addition to the GSM community, which is very important and adds so much to every American family in every American city, it's, and you've got this complex racial history.
Yes.
With that as a backdrop, what are the issues that folks in your district are worried about, including say criminal justice rehaul, all of that? How's that work in your county?
Oh, well, we, on the whole, and once again, just broadly generalizing here, on the whole, we have a lot of lower income families throughout the district, a lot of single parent families. We have just lower wages. I remember looking up the median income just around here where I live. It's not livable wages. It's staggering what people are trying to live on. And you would think that I thought this actually. We moved out here 11 years ago from Dallas, and I was like, oh, well, the cost of living will compare. It doesn't, not that much. It does as far as home pricing goes, and rents go, which I've started to see those go up a bit. We have Dallas people that are moving here. I mean, I'm a Dallas person who moved here, but they're trying to kind of turn it into like a Dallas-sized area. I realize I'm keeping this more local than talking about the entire district, but I am philosophically a burn it down anarchist. That's what my heart wants. But I also realize that not that I would ever get my wish, but if that reality were to ever be realized, a lot of people would be harmed. There is a lot of conversations that need to be had that are honest between the people and the people that represent them. And these people need to actually represent them, their interests. You are supposed to be my representative. Listen to me. Don't just send me some form letter back or refuse to see me when I go visit your office in Austin, which has happened. So I feel like there just has to be like real legitimate, what is it that you need to improve your life? We need to improve communities. We need to be pushing more mutual aid types of, just get that perspective out there, get more people engaged in that. I'm part of the Vermin Supreme Institute, as you know, and our public works director, Chris Rogers, is a good friend of mine that I've known since I was like 19. I'm 43 now, so a long time. He just recently he built a food pantry in his garage and stocked it, just went and bought, fortunately he already had some really good shelving and so on, but he went and bought a bunch of canned goods, just a bunch of various sundries and things like, diapers and just basic necessities that a lot of people are lacking. And I do have a point to this. And the first time he opened it, he saw an influx of people wanting to come in and donate. Somebody donated him a freezer. People were bringing canned goods, fresh goods, toys, like children's toys, all kinds of things. And even things that he hadn't thought about, like, oh my gosh, that's such a great idea. And he was so moved by that. He and his wife were running it, and their daughter was helping as well, and her boyfriend. And they were just so moved by the response they were getting from the community. But he was a little disappointed because he's like, only a few people in need actually showed up to pick some stuff up. So then he's like, I know, I'll start putting flyers out and put them in strategic places like laundromats and AutoZones. And I think, I think this time, that's what we were talking about. I think this time he just started with an apartment complex just to kind of see the response he would get. And he did have more families joining him this weekend that were in need. And, and he said a lot of them were embarrassed and they were like, we'll contribute when we can. But he and his wife are just such good people. They're, don't even worry about it. And these are the things. So he's trying to build a model for people to do this through, like, in their garages. These are things we need to be doing to build strong communities where we trust and rely on one another. And then we replace the state with mutual aid. And, obviously, like, I know a lot of libertarians think, oh, well, we should keep the borders closed until the welfare programs are closed. Like, oh my God.
Nope.
Like, have you looked at where most welfare goes? It goes to the people that are born here, first of all, and we systemically keep down. We keep these people poor because it behooves us to. Not you and me, but just the system at large, the government. They profit from people being dependent upon them. It's a travesty. It's a crime against humanity. If we can build more trust amongst one another. I grew up in the 80s. We were taught stranger danger and all that crap. I don't think that. Like, I don't feel that way, fortunately. And I think a lot of us don't. And a lot of the younger generation now are also feel there. There's always the risk, of course, when you meet anyone, that you meet online or through a dating service or anything like that. But we're building a culture of trust, and we need to continue to build that and continue to rely upon one another and ourselves in order to replace the government programs that keep these people rich, that keep them corrupt, that keep insurance prices high. That's a whole other issue, but it's fight poverty, not the poor, JC said. Absolutely. And he puts things more succinctly than I do. That's our JC.
On the whole anarchy front, let's look at the average day of a non-anarchist or someone who professes to be a non-anarchist. How many acts of anarchy does an individual perform every day here in the United States? Hundreds? Yep. Thousands? And yet they still seem to feel the need for the crutch of government. And regardless of what, ism that you refer to yourself within the libertarian spectrum. There's still the fundamental belief is that you determine the course of your life, of your day. In a state like Texas, that's got to be an extraordinarily complex issue to broach to folks who, again, don't mess with Texas, but at the same time, clearly, many embrace the notion of nationalism. Many embrace the notion of identity politics, all of that. So that's why I find Texas so fascinating, because you've got image versus reality versus perceived desire. And in getting back to the central mission of the show, which is running for office, in the midst of that, as someone who is aware, as opposed to has been just, blue/red pilled/gold pilled into an existence that's defined by other people, that's got to be some amazing conversations. It's just inordinately amazing to discuss with people. Are you doing the door knocking thing, or how are you broaching that type of conversation with folks?
Not yet. I'd imagine we will be doing that come, probably a year from now, or maybe later in the summer next year. Right now, we're just really trying to get some visibility. We are going to, once again, referring to my very dear friend, JC Cook. He recently ran for mayor of Athens, which is part of this district. He and my husband both produced some incredible videos for his campaign. And so obviously they're like, well, yeah, we'll do some for you guys. and they're going to be amazing. We're going to get them on YouTube, on Hulu. We're going to look at, we've already looked at pricing, for, local television and so on. So we're going to go for it. We're going to do this. Oh, Michael, good question. Pat, do you mind if I delve into that a little bit?
I didn't see. What's the big question? Yeah. JC was actually on the show.
Yeah. He was over here in the weeks prior to the election.
So let's finish your thought, but then we'll get into that for a second, because JC deserves that attention to that issue.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Because the one thing I wanted to ask you before we segue into that, because the next natural step is the media, the local media. Mm-hmm. Is there a predominant single media in your area? I was hard pressed to find. I usually love to read the local newspaper the week before, but where does one go to if one is trying to attempt to create, do some type of media representation, involvement? advertising campaign, or do you really need to, at this point, strict to geo-fenced social media?
So we're in a weird television and news market. A lot of the news market is Tyler, Texas, which there's only a small part of Tyler in our district. But but then we have like Bryan and College Station, Nacogdoches, and then getting on down to Montgomery County, which, like I said, is closer to Houston. We also have the Dallas news circuit, but we're just in a weird area, like exactly where we are, like on the cusp of East Texas. So like where I am and where JC is, like on the cusp of East Texas, but not really East Texas. But so we're really going to utilize a lot of, you asked about door knocking. We're definitely going to do that. We're definitely going to be utilizing texting, calling, and so on. Right now, we're just trying to get visibility. There are a couple of prominent local papers here. Athens Daily Review is pretty popular where I live. And then Tyler Morning Telegraph, I believe. When we had Vermin Supreme out here, it was actually in a neighboring county, but it's still, the East Texas area or whatever. We actually had quite a bit of press show up, and I just,
I'm sorry. I'm thinking, how does Vermin Supreme, and I consider him a pal. I really enjoyed the time we spent when he came to Boston. I believe, one of my favorite interviews of my entire life when I had Vermin here on the run up to the convention a year or so ago. How does Vermin Supreme play in your brand of Texas politics? How did that work?
Well, like JC just said, the Telegraph. So that's the Tyler paper, I assume. Tyler, whatever. Yeah, they did give us really good coverage. For Cirque du Poney is what we called the Vermin event that we did out here. That was also JC's idea. JC is an idea, like, person, period. Like, he's just brilliant. When he's over, we usually just break out the notebooks and we're like, all right, JC, what you got?
The Cirque du Poney. Okay.
Cirque du Poney. Oh, it was great too. We had, and actually we can utilize this to segue back into the mayor race. We had a really great event in Ben Wheeler, Texas at the Forge. It's a really beautiful venue. And in fact, Tyler and I are going out there tomorrow to hang out with another couple friends of ours for our anniversary, which I'm pretty excited about. So, JC. Oh yeah. Okay. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. We put on this event that had a bunch of bands. There's a thing that's been going on here since the 70s every spring and fall called the Marshmallow Jam. It's very similar to rainbow gatherings and so on. It's in the middle of nowhere. And these people have just, an abundance of acreage, and they've cleared some of it off to host events. They built a stage right on this big pond that's on their property. You come, you pitch your tent for the weekend, you do whatever the fuck you want, you're free. You are free. It's beautiful anarchy, and holy crap, it's a blast. And the guy who runs that, he helped me put this show together, Cirque du Poney. So we had a bunch of bands. We had a poet, which I will get back to that momentarily. We had a liquid light show, which was amazing. We had fire performers, and then we had Vermin Supreme performing, and it was an incredible spectacle. And we had vendors, and we were encouraging people to just be as wild and crazy as they wanted to be. I kept trying to promote, like, be part of the art, dress up as crazy as you want, and so on. And it was amazing. It was really great. But to get back to the poet, though, this is going to take a little bit, and I know I've been really rambly. I'm sorry, Pat. I had met this woman at a friend's party, and my friend JC was here at my house working with my husband Tyler on some project. I don't remember what. And I came home from this party like 4 a.m, and I'm like, I just met this incredible chick. She's amazing. We super clicked. Oh my gosh. y'all are gonna love her, like just rambling on and on and on and on. And so anyway, JC had actually suggested like, oh yeah, we should definitely have a poet at Berman's event. I'm like, oh yeah, I know exactly who I'm going to ask. And the guy that was helping me book it, Daniel, he was friends with her too, and he was like, absolutely, let's get her. And she came out and performed. And JC and I went and sat up front to watch her. It's one thing if there's a band playing, you mill about and socialize and so on. Like, it's that kind of an event. But when there's a poet, you sit down and you listen. And I looked over at his face and I'm watching him, watching her, and I'm like, oh my God, he's in love. It was so adorable. And now they're engaged. So. And it turns out they knew each other way back in the day. When he was like a really young kid, his grandmother was her drama teacher, I believe. And it's just kind of a weird thing. So it's like I'm about to start crying again.
Things happen at those type of events for a reason. Those events happen for a reason, and you bring really back. Cool. You bring what I enjoyed about the Vermin conversation I had with him. It was about an hour and a half, and we actually spent very little time on, if you will, the current Vermin Supreme character. We spent most of the time talking about his early days. With a variety of everything from anarchy to civil rights organizations and everything in between that really created Vermin as we know him right now. Again, that's amongst the many values in this conversation is you're displaying for us a Texas again that I just didn't know existed. I wouldn't have thought that events. I mean, you certainly got the space, right? So events that would engage in everything from anarchy to every ism probably imaginable to, and I'm just going to take a jump here that would involve the psychedelic movement, that would involve.
Indeed.
I'm making a leap here. Help me out with this.
Yeah.
But to see that in a place like rural Texas, again, speaks to the earliest part of this conversation tonight, which is generationally, as is so happening around the country, people are evolving into being colorblind, racially blind, religiously blind, and looking to individuals as opposed. And my daughters are in their 20s. It's the things that I notice, not object to, but I just take notice of because I was raised in a different time. It is astonishing to me. Is just generally accepted. So by so many folks, which is the question I've been waiting to ask all night, in a place like your community where you've got rural, you've got local colleges, you've got a rich mosaic of American life. Mm-hmm. It strikes me that being sort of uncompromisingly, unapologetically, inexplicably, verifiably, demonstrably libertarian and free with a healthy dose of anarchism thrown in just for sheer effect is a way of actually bringing to the movement the people who are truly attracted to it, as opposed to trying to square peg round hole a generation for whom liberty will mean nothing more than an etched in wood drawing. And I want to believe those amendments that I want to believe as opposed to the amendments you want to believe.
Yes.
Exactly. Is that where the opportunity is?
I believe so. And this is something we talked about a lot as we were getting ready to launch this campaign, because we see a lot, when I talked about the marshmallow jam that happens out here, that's been going on since the 70s. And you mentioned psychedelics, which, as you know, I'm a huge proponent of. Terrence McKenna had actually said he believed that the culture shift that was necessary started happening in the 20s with the Beat Generation. And, I'm still thinking about that. I think that that's true, but then the 50s happened and there have been a lot of setbacks, but just with the people who are ready to be more aware and be more participant instead of just following the status quo because that's easier or because that's just their upbringing or what they believe that they should be doing and so on. The Beat Generation was something really special. And I think that, we're kind of witnessing that. And so when you go to Marshmallow Jam, you see a lot of people that are very, very young, half my age. My son is 24. I'm friends with people even younger than him. We have a campaign staffer who's younger than him. He was out here for our campaign launch last weekend. The young people is where it's at. This is their country. This is their state. This is their district. This is their lives. And I think it's about time the old white rich guys kind of stepped aside. I mean, I'm not their age, but I understand at least most of what they're saying, and what I don't, then I'm willing to listen. Okay, boomer, right, Dan? I love you, Dan. But I mean, it's true though. And it was funny that a friend of mine had come out for our launch event last weekend at the brewery, and his dad was talking to me, and he's like, referring to me when I was talking about people half my age, but referring to me, saying it's good to see young people taking an interest in politics and actually like following through, which, I've known them for a few years. We actually met them at the brewery, and they're not libertarians, but they came out to support me, which I think is really, really, really cool. And I was a little bit puzzled for a second because I'm like, well, I'm not a young person. But then I'm like, well, compared to a lot of the people that are currently serving in the state house and the U.S. House, I am. And I would like to, because I've become emboldened to utilize the tools that have been made available to me through people like Vermin Supreme, through people like John McAfee, which I actually do want to talk about with you tonight a bit, because that's how we met. It takes some time, and I hope it takes less time for the next generations going forward. But we're here to serve them. It's not like you always take care of your offspring, right? When you're a parent. So I think we should just look at things that way, period. Just generationally. Oh my gosh.
Well, we don't have a lot of time left, but first of all, let's talk JC Cook. What happened there? First of all, and then we need to talk about John McAfee. We do. So what happened with JC? He runs a noble campaign. He starts a little late, but he got the inspiration, and he worked it hard.
He did, and he found out kind of towards the end of the file deadline, actually, oh wait, there's nobody running against the incumbent.
Exactly.
Well, I'm going to do it then, screw it, that kind of thing. I want people to have a choice. You shouldn't just have the incumbent. And so, he made the choice right then and there, and especially because it was kind of late in the game, to not raise funds, to just kind of do and be like what he is, and to present his ideas to the community. Did a really good job with that. He made some really, really beautiful videos. They actually did really well. Especially within the community. He went to a couple of the local events, spoke to some of the a pastor at one of the churches that's in the southern part of Athens. That's the more kind of less affluent area, if you will. They were impressed that he was there helping, whereas the incumbent Monty Montgomery was not. And so we did see a post on Facebook not long before the election that his wife, Monty Montgomery, the incumbent, his wife did this whole, people are asking me why we're putting up signs for Monty. You might not know, but other people, or there's someone else running against him. And, the future of the children of Athens is at stake. And it was like this kind of dramatic thing. And then there's a screenshot or a photo of Monty looking all nice and respectable and normal, like a good old white guy. And not that I have problems with old white guys. I have a lot of old white guys in my life.
But, some of your best friends are old white guys.
You know what I mean, though. Establishment, old white guy. Okay. And then JC, looking like this or something, from one of his videos. And it was meant to make him look silly and like a joke or whatever, but it was actually pretty cool, I thought. Mm-hmm. And we saw that. We were really hurt and angered. We were like, why? JC only said positive things. Why would his wife say something like that? Horrifying. And anyway, he wound up getting 14% of the vote, which is really, really, really badass. And then
exactly.
But then less than a month after the election, JC, I got gaslit by his supporters for defending myself from the nonsense too. He did indeed. He did indeed. Oh, it was a fiasco for a couple of days there. We were all trying to take the high road, but woo,
yeah.
It was hard. So less than a month later, he gets arrested for solicitation of a minor.
Oh my God.
And it was part of a Texas DPS sting. So as my husband had pointed out, they knew about this while the election's going on, still let him win it, and then waited until afterwards to arrest him. So they knew some corrupt fucking nasty pervert is running. And anyway, I know, innocent till proven guilty and so on, but they got him in a sting. So draw your own conclusions there. But we're sitting there going and JC was the threat to your children? What the fucking fuck?
Rich is the irony.
Indeed. And yeah, JC, one of us is definitely a danger to children. Indeed. And so they let that happen. And JC was gonna take a stand and say hey, we should run a special election, which I believe is permitted by the city rules, but was not they went ahead and appointed somebody from the council within a couple days. And I love you too, Ashley, so much. And then I don't know. I haven't heard anything one way or the other about who they appointed for city council to replace her. And to me, I feel like that's unfair because they're going that route. They're appointing rather than holding a special election. And it's not fair. JC tried to fight it, but he lost.
Well, particularly just a couple of weeks into the term. I mean, I get it if there's 6 months to go, the expense of running an election, all that. But, we don't live in a monarchy here. There are allegedly no appointments to office. Well, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's, we live, we learn. And I think you guys are creating a strategy down there. That is, if you talk
plans, follow him. JC for mayor is the page on Facebook right now, but follow him on Facebook and just he'll be revealing some dirty little plans at some point in the near future.
Just tell him he can tell me. I won't tell a soul.
I mean, not dirty. I should say dirty actually, in light of what we were just talking about. Okay, some fun shenanigans that are fun for everyone, not dirty. Hey,
there you go. All right, let's talk. We've only got a couple minutes left. Let's talk about John McAfee. You were obviously very close. Talk to me about the impact of John McAfee. What your thoughts are when you heard. I know a lot of us at this point in time we're just so the gallows humor almost kicks in right away because we're shocked but not shocked anymore. The instant analogies about Hillary making the announcement 2 weeks ago that John had passed. All of that was going on, but at the same time, we need to take a moment and reflect on the spirit, the ingenuity, the attitude, a life lived in a gonzo manner that until we had this conversation tonight. I'd forgotten that people can still do. Talk to me about your thoughts on John McAfee.
That campaign changed my entire life and definitely the trajectory of my political career. I've always been more of a kind of colorful person and more, my mom was always like, you sure do dance the beat of your own drum, which she supported, but I'm sure it got really difficult for her at times. But John, I'll try to make this really brief because, like you said, we don't have a lot of time. My husband and I went to a debate watching party hosted by Libertarian Party of Dallas, and I believe Tarrant as well. And it was when they were doing the Stossel debate, and we were just quiet going home going we've got to do whatever we can to get this guy elected. Oh my God, it was the passion. When I first found out he was running in our party, I'm like, hey, great, there's our Donald Trump. Yay. It wasn't that. He spoke with just such passion and conviction. It really, really just floored me. And we're on our way home, and we were in Grand Prairie or something, which is about an hour and a half away or so. So we decided to stop at a bar in Dallas and just kind of sit there and think and talk. But all we could say was like, we got to get this guy the nomination. Like, that's all we could say. There's a long story about that, but he did wind up with a new campaign manager. We reached out to her. She got us on board. She was phenomenal. Tiffany Madison also changed my life. And I actually was saying that on a campaign call of mine just a few weeks ago. She is the type of person who will empower the individual, and John was just so passionate. Like, I ran his delegate calls, never said the same thing twice. Everything he always said just like really just was a spear in my heart of like love and like, boom, like this is how we should do things. And I've never been the same since, and it was my birthday actually when we were in Orlando. And we lost the nomination. And I went out to the hallway. I was barely crying. And like, but we all got right back to work. We were like, fuck this, we're still doing the thing. We're going to do vote different. And we did do it for that cycle. Right. It's evolved since, but, we were still a team, and and it still was meaningful to us. And, if it wasn't for that experience, and James Weeks stripping on stage, by the way, that was also part of my whole kind of shift. I probably wouldn't have asked Vermin Supreme to run in our party. I met Vermin Supreme actually for the first time, like that same day, in Orlando, right. And which a lot of us did, which was awesome.
Same here.
Yeah, and that's the first time I met you, Pat. Yep. That was awesome. But yeah, he was a brilliant man. He lived inside of no box. He lived on his own terms. He was phenomenal. He was passionate. He just had such conviction in his heart. It really moved me so much, and right. Emboldened me, empowered me as an individual. And, Tiffany Madison, his campaign manager, was very much that type of person as well. So it just was a beautiful, beautiful thing that happened. And I don't know a lot about his 2020 campaign because I was obviously on Vermin's, and I think it was really a bit weird for me, but I'm glad he did it. And his campaign manager then was Rob Lisha, and I love Rob. And I'm really sorry for everyone in his family. It was really shocking to hear that, like very shocking. And what are your thoughts?
I think just because of the time issue, what I'd love to do is invite you, you and I need to continue the conversation live and online, perhaps in a slightly different format, because there's a lot to be said.
There is a lot. Yeah, I agree.
I will say this, that this is one of the few cases where the poetic cliches actually apply. The story about the man who lived on his life on his own terms, the man who found both prominence and wealth and success and despair in his own brilliance. I mean, yes. This is an individual. If you had the opportunity, as they might say in some bad high school poem, to orbit around his son, you emerge different. You emerge differently. You just simply did. And again, that's on one hand, that's so cliche, it's so cliche, but at the same time, if you've had relationships like this because of the libertarian movement, those are not the kind of relationships that are generated by normal, quote unquote, what the normies would define as a life in politics. A life in politics is usually spent arguing about Robert's Rules of Order or some other nonsense. And a life in politics is often defined as, targeting voters to make a cynical, controlled statement about what you purportedly, allegedly, at that moment, supposedly believe in. All of that is what you get in a life of politics. I want us in a week or two that's been so difficult. We've been off the air because our show happens to have coincided with a number of major LNC meetings. But I just want to take a moment to celebrate that which is created by the libertarian spirit. And the most important part of that is the relationship between individual people. We celebrate the individual in the libertarian movement, but at the same time, I don't know if we often take the time to sit back and celebrate the relationships that have occurred because of the libertarian movement. I think it's fair to say that you and I,
Team Supreme does.
right? Well, I know you guys do,
And
but
many other people, yeah.
but you and I, without the libertarian movement, never ever would have met.
Indeed.
It's just
I would have met a lot of my best friends. Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. So, because the libertarian movement at its core, not the mechanics of it, not the politics of it, not the internal workings of it, but its very philosophical core, celebrates the individual and allows individuals to celebrate each other in a manner that's not possible in other ways of life. And until you've embraced that ideal, then we will continue to immerse ourselves and drown ourselves in nonsense. And that's, to me, is the biggest takeaway I have from the folks in your part of Texas and other parts of the country as well, who celebrate that, have always celebrated that, and have always seen to that. So that's actually my takeaway from tonight. It has little to do with a local election, which is very important and means a lot to the people in your part of, we'll say it, Mideast Texas. But at the same time, it's what you're able to show to people as a possibility. And it's the possibilities that intrigue us. And it's the possibilities that, despite the events of the last 2 weeks, make us move forward with this obsession that all of us have, centered around, well, the statement of principles, libertarian philosophy, your own personal brand of anarchy, whatever that may be. And again, if that sounds like, Oprah-esque media babble, it's not.
No, it's really not. And I do want to, real quick for the record, because we are talking about some of the bullshit of the last couple of weeks. LP Texas Twitter is fire AF. It's at LP Texas. Go follow our Twitter. Our Twitter will make you happy to be a libertarian, proud to be a libertarian. I am so happy with our communications director. He is also my SD rep. I don't know if he wants me to name him or not, so I won't. But I should ask him about that, because I do want to brag on him. And the person that he had hired to run our Twitter is amazing.
You probably shouldn't, because I know that there are certain independent small media organizations that will trade future draft picks and cases of beer to be named later in order to acquire said talent. So you probably should keep him or her or they in the bunker, hidden, because I've seen some of the stuff that LP Texas Twitter has generated, and it's astonishing that they can actually dance that fine line between being confrontational and yet thoroughly educational. That's beautiful. It's an amazing way to go.
We can be proud of.
All right, time for shameless self-promotion. How can folks again get a hold of Des Lindsey? Yep.
I am peaceandlovetexas.com is our campaign site. peaceandlovetexas.com/donate if you want to help us out. We are actually going to be, so details to be announced soon, but we are going to be doing something like super duper cool at the gay bar, and hoping that will be a model for things we can do in other establishments throughout the district. We have a lot of really cool plans in the works. We've got television ads, like I said, YouTube, Hulu, all sorts of things. I am at Peace and Love Texas, or we are at Peace and Love Texas on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Our Instagram kind of sucks right now, but we will we'll be working on that hopefully soon. But yeah, that's it.
All right, let me see if I get it straight this time. Des Lindsey, she is running for the state of Texas. Well, actually, I was philosophically right, because ultimately, the United States Senate is meaningless when you compare it to the Texas Senate. All right, so let's have our ducks in order here. But you are running for the state of Texas state Senate. You're jumping on the bandwagon early and often in order to create an air of inevitability, if you will, with your campaign and your special part of Texas. And congratulations to you and your team for getting out there and working it and taking libertarianism to places that haven't seen it before. With that becomes real responsibility, because you are the first person that they're going to meet in so many ways, you and JC and your crew, for whom they'll identify as libertarians. But at the same token, absolutely, there's a level of courage and personal commitment there that we celebrate here at this show, for no other reason than the commitment it takes to open up your lives to folks in your community. We don't talk about governing here. We use the word steward, to steward, if you will, the community resources in a manner that's appropriate to what folks really desire in government, which is coalescing needs and wants amongst individuals and sharing resources, but at the same time, extending and maintaining a level of personal freedom and independence from, well, what people would define as how they should live their lives. So it's just great stuff. And I know that you and I will be talking soon, very soon.
Of course.
Folks, you've been listening to Candidate Corner, a production of the Libertarian Party and Libertarian National Committee. I would like to take, as always, the opportunity to thank John Gabso. He does our production here. He's the one who puts up the fancy graphics and the witty comments and the questions. Without him, this show would not be possible. Like so many in the libertarian movement, he runs here from a day filled with personal growth at his chosen place of employment, as so many of us do, and gives of himself. So I can't say enough about his contribution. Folks, we're going to be back on schedule. Hopefully we'll get it together for this Monday. We're going to talk about affiliates again, and the important action that's going on in affiliates. Let's be blunt. It's individual candidacies like this and affiliates which are driving us forward as a movement and a philosophy. They need to be celebrated. They need to be discussed. They need to be honored, and they need to be promoted. We'll continue to do that here as long as we can. Folks, my name is Pat Ford. I'm proud to be your host. I'm proud to be a libertarian, and we'll see you Monday night. Have a wonderful, safe weekend. Thank you.